We all know the saying, when God calls, he equips. He never calls anyone and not have in mind not only the individual and particular journey, but he also has in mind the grace, the individual unique grace that he will give to each individual who must go through, at times, celebration or crisis. When Jesus called his disciples to follow him, it was an invitation to come and learn about the love of the Father. Beloved, we gather this morning as a people called by a loving God to grow in his love. Usually at the beginning of Lent, Ash Wednesday, we are constantly reminded of the three actions, the concrete actions that we are invited to practice to show love for God and love for each other. Sometimes we are able to do it, sometimes we are challenged. But at the end of the day, our intention starts with the intention. Our intention is always and must be aimed at pleasing our God, so that if and when we fall down, this loving, merciful God will always say, I am here. Get up. Let us try again. And so this morning, beloved, as we reflect on the gospel, we are reminded of the three concrete actions of love. We will change the order for our own reflection. What is prayer, beloved? Yes, prayer is speaking with God. But we must also hasten to add prayer is listening to God. We are very good at telling God our problems and issues and what we would like and desire. But this very God who calls often says, okay, I hear you. Now, are you willing to listen to me? In other words, beloved, when there is real and honest communication, it is a moment of heart meeting heart. Two hearts. That's what prayer is. It is one loving heart meeting a heart that is so filled with love that this loving heart knows nothing else except to always embrace us and keep us in his presence. And so when we think of prayer, sometimes the thought may be, do I have time to pray? Am I too tired to pray? I have all these other things that I must do. When will I fit prayer in? Morning, throughout the day, or night? And yet God says, if you truly understand what prayer is, it is one loving heart meeting, contacting, merging with another heart. On this Valentine's Day, prayer invites us to exercise that kind of love with our God. For when we understand that this loving God is always willing not just to listen and speak, but to just hold us, then we have nothing to fear. It's like a child who's had a rough day at school. Perhaps the lessons were too hard. Perhaps the child was being bullied. Perhaps the child had a fight or a disagreement with another friend. And sometimes all the child wants is just to be in the presence of a loving parent and to be held. And in that hug, in that moment of real contact, and knowing how much one is loved, the child is able to get the strength and courage to carry on. That's what prayer is. Prayer does not negate what we will experience in life. Prayer does not say that if you pray to me, you will be spared. But prayer says, in my arms, you will have all that you need to carry on. And so when we come to God in prayer, beloved, it's an abandonment of self to be with the other. Yes, some of us love our own company. We like our personal surrounding. But when it comes to love, love involves and invites another. And love looks forward to being with the other. And so one acid test of how well we love our God is, do I choose to make that time and spend that time with my God? Because this loving God is always there for me. When it comes to then fasting, what is fasting? People will usually give up something for Lent, something meaningful, like chocolate cake or pizza. Some may choose to give up a meal, one meal per day, and you put that money aside until Easter, so you give it to the poor. We'll get to that in a minute. Some may choose to give up meat. Some may choose to fast from sin, which is the constant call of our God. Fasting from, as we've heard before, gossiping, bearing false witness, lying, cheating, stealing, fooling your spouse, not being there for your children when they need you. All of these things come crashing down. The season of Lent reminds us that we are not perfect people, but we can come to a perfect God. And one thing that God desires is that we fast, we make room for His Holy Spirit to take control of us. Because what is fasting? If we're used to having something and get our fill, then when we fast, we are creating space. When we choose to fast from that which is not of God, we allow more room for the Holy Spirit and His grace to come into our lives. We allow that strength that we do not have to take control of us. So that those who find it difficult to listen to God, when we choose to fast, it's an exercise in not just discipline, it's an exercise of love. It is saying, I am incomplete, and although I try to fill my life with material things or experiences, these do not satisfy. So when I choose to fast, I am saying, I am creating space for you, my God. I'm creating space for you, Holy Spirit, to come and fill that space so that you can use me the way you desire. And because I love you, I will say yes to what you ask. Fasting is an indication that I am willing to give up something that satisfies me to please the other. What is the key ingredient of a happy married life? Each spouse choosing to do something to please the other. What is the joy of the Christian life? Every disciple choosing to do things that please our God. And that's the secret of love. For when I make the other happy, guess what? It comes back to me, pressed down and running over. We often hear at some wedding receptions, happy wife, what? Happy life. But you ever get the husband miserable and see what happens? Love has to be mutual. Both must seek and want to please the other and help the other to grow. We are all familiar with children. They cry when they are hungry. And sometimes they get attached to certain things, a blanket or a toy. And when they want it or need it, what do? They cry. It's a sign that they are in need of something to fill some space or gap. When we grow in love, we learn to let go of that which we want more so that the other and his or her needs can be met. Which then logically leads into almsgiving. What is almsgiving? First and foremost, it is to acknowledge that all that we have, all is gift. Everything, every blessing is gift. In order for us to practice almsgiving, we must first have a heart filled with thanksgiving to God. For it is He who has given all that we will ever need or desire. And then He invites us to answer the question, do you love me? Because if you love me, you will then pay attention to those around you and listen to their cries for help, whatever that help might be. Financial, spiritual, emotional, psychological. So that in the giving of alms, it's not just limited to money or material things. It is actually the giving of self. A concrete way of showing that love is practical, not just in words, but it is a practical action. When God calls, He says, are you ready to take a journey of love? It will demand that you learn how to die to self more and more. But when you die to self, that's the irony of the spiritual life. The more you die, the more you rise to newer and higher heights of life. And when we understand that and when we practice it, There's a certain peace and joy that comes from the experience. When God calls, beloved, he invites us to follow him. And he says, come learn how to love. When we learn how to love, we then appreciate who not only God is, but to cherish the gifts that we are meant to be to and for each other. Hearts that grow cold for whatever reason need to be touched. When we come, beloved, to celebrate the God of love in the presence of the Eucharist, we must ask for the grace to have our hearts touched by the power of his love. We must have eyes of love to see the face and image of God in each other. Because if we don't, we give the devil his due. We must have willing hands ready to reach out, ears open to listen, feet ready to walk with the other. We never know what the other is going through, we sometimes are quick to judge, but we never really know what the person is going through. What does love demand of us? My brother, my sister, I see you failing. I see you falling. How can I help? A merciful, loving God is always ready to lift us up. How do we lift him up? Beloved, as we choose now to enter into the season of Lent, may these real acts of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving be concrete signs of our love for God and each other. If our love for God and each other has grown cold, now it's time to rekindle it. For as we start this journey of Lent, we are invited to not only sacrifice for our God, but to do all that we can to draw closer into his loving arms. To him, beloved, be glory and praise forever and ever. Amen.